will start and with Sureshji, your permission. So good evening, friends, and welcome to a very, very special session on Vishwa Manthan today. Today, we are truly reaching the pinnacle in our quest for intellectual enrichment on this platform, because our guest today is none other than Shri Suresh Prabhuji. Sureshji is one of the most accomplished parliamentarians and administrators of our time. And I dare say that if he was not a politician, he will most likely be an equally, if not even more successful scholar and entrepreneur. Throughout his very long and rich administrative and political career, Sureshji has been at the helm of several ministries, including industry and commerce, civil aviation, railways, and power, just to name a few. And during his tenure at each of these ministries, he has left an indelible mark with very, very significant reforms, transformation, and tremendous results. Currently, he is the Prime Minister Sherpa at the G20 and at the G7. And in this role, he is responsible for shaping the agenda of the Government of India on key issues at these forums. He is a member of the Rajya Sabha, having been a member of Lok Sabha for 4 consecutive terms. Many of us are blessed to have met, listened to, and interacted with Sureshji a number of times, and every time we are left wiser. I personally had the opportunity to meet Sureshji during his visits in Shanghai. Also at his office in New Delhi when he was the Union Minister for Railways, and most recently along with Amit at the India Ideas Conclave near Vadodara. I vividly remember that during the conclave in Vadodara, Sureshji was talking about the importance of staying connected to one's root. And he said something fabulous. He said, those who become, who are rootless become ruthless. It was such a gem. And I am very, very sure that we will all have an opportunity to gather such similar pearls of wisdom during this interaction today. I have truly the pleasure, privilege, and a great honor to welcome Sureshji to our platform today. And I invite Amit to take the session forward.
Thank you so much, Pradyumna. Thank you so much, Sureshji, for just accepting our invitation. This is the hallmark of your greatness, Sureshji. Also, Sureshji, what I would like to quickly tell you about this wonderful group that we have here. These are all people and these are all friends who have a connection with China. Most of them, at least. Most of them have served at leadership levels in China and are now spread all over the world. You have yourself had a wonderful connection with this country. You have actually spoken on different forums in this country and also back home. So it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you, sir. This session, Sureshji, is slightly different because we want to understand the persona, Sureshji, and also learn, because as you can see, we have business leaders here, we have professionals who are spread all over the world, and there's a lot of learning. So without further ado, let me start with asking you a very interesting first question. Sir, you completed your schooling from Shardashram Vidya Mandir, Dadar, Mumbai. You followed that with your bachelor's in commerce with honors from Dhanuka College, Vilaypale. And you received your bachelor's law degree from the prestigious Ruparel College. So you're a chartered accountant who held that All India rank 11th, if I'm not mistaken, in the CA exams. So, sir, how did your political journey begin after such an illustrious education qualification? Are there any learnings and lessons that you would like to share regarding this major shift in your life?
Yeah, firstly, Amit and Pradyumna, thank you very much for your kind words. And also, I'm very happy to meet all of you, though virtually. But I met many of you individually, personally. And as Amit was saying, you have a strong Shanghai connection. So there is a very interesting connection to that. There was the Shanghai Gang, which is very well known in Chinese politics as well. So I know I'm very happy that I'm meeting such an illustrious group of people at the same time, because I have met many of you in Shanghai as well, and as well as in different locations. And I've spoken in Shanghai, I've spoken to on your platform, and I'm very happy that I'm meeting you all once again. And I'm very happy to see such illustrious, successful people, despite your varying responsibilities and changing responsibilities, you're kept in touch with each other. And I really congratulate you for that, because you need a strong anchor. I know who is the anchor amongst you, who kept all of you together. The glue is so important. And of course, Pradyumna works for an organization which makes glue, I think. One of the, Hinkel, one of the responsibility, if I'm not mistaken, Hinkel.
Yeah, absolutely, sir.
You work for Hinkel, right? And
yes, sir.
My memory serves me right. So I am very happy that you stayed together and working together. And thank you for admitting me into your group, though for a short period of time. So I'm very happy to be there. And I know why you not make me permanent member, because I don't deserve to be in such an illustrious group. But I'm very happy that I'm part of you, at least for some time. You know, let me make an effort to answer this question. As you correctly pointed out, let me just fill in little gaps. You know, I started my schooling, not though I finished my schooling in Shadashram, but I started it in a place called BPM High School in Khar, where I stayed all my life. And still I continue to, I am though, of course now last 25 years, I live more in Delhi than in Mumbai, but Mumbai is my hometown, my place where I grew up, the place which is really close to my heart. So I live in Khar, where my family still lives there, my wife and me and my son. And the school was in BPM High School, and I studied there till 6th. Then my father, though I've been his only son, I have my 3 sisters, he took a very momentous decision. He decided to put me in a hostel. At that particular time, was not very usual decision. And he said, and he used to cry when he used to come to see me off and meet me, because he could not actually reconcile to that possibility of my son. I'm staying away from my son. My mother used to send me regular letters. So I was in Shadashram, which is in Lonavala, for a few months. Then, of course, I completed my schooling from Shadashram 11. And Shadashram was a very interesting school. At that time, I passed out in 1969. At that time, Shadashram, and before that, of course, when I passed in 69, but a few years earlier, they used to have a special coach for cricket. They used to teach very special Indian sports, like Malkham, like, of course, also not Indian, but boxing and all of that. And in fact, Sachin Tendulkar is a product of Shadashram. Sachin Kambli is product of Shadashram, though junior to me. So that was a kind of a school, though not a very middle class, but very nice school in Dadar. Then, of course, as you correctly said, I went to all these schools. Point I'm saying is, when I became chartered accountant, that was not my, I didn't know what is chartered accountant. That was my father's decision that I should become a CA. I wanted to be a lawyer. And if you recall those days, early 70s, those were the days where, you know, there used to be fight between those who advocated primacy of fundamental rights. What is more important? The state is more important, or the personal right to property is more important? Those were the days, if you recall, they were the days when it was nationalization happened. Of course, it happened in 69. These were the days when the privy purses were abolished. So there were the fight which is going on between whether the rights of the citizen to private property is more important, or the state has a overriding right over that property. So I wanted to be a lawyer, because I used to be always, that used to be very glamorous profession. And I used to feel very strongly, of course, fighting for the state. And that I used to feel that the society must have more right over the property. But so I wanted to be a lawyer. My father decided to make me, told me to be a chartered accountant. And I became chartered accountant only because of my father's desire. And then he wanted me to go to US to do MBA. And I got admission, but I said I will earn my money to take admission into US. At that time, the dollar was about 6-7 rupees, I think, not more than that. So I needed not about 40,000-50,000 rupees, which I decided to earn because I had become chartered accountant. I said, let me practice. This was the only way I could earn money. And I will then earn enough to go to US to again fulfill my father's desire. But actually my practice grew so much that I stuck in India and I could never go out of India. Of course, I traveled to 144 countries since then, but didn't relocate myself outside India. Now, the question asking me, how did I get into politics? So and how did I get rank? Actually, if you want to ask that question, how did I rank in CA? I never studied. I never used to study. And all my friends used to study for about 3 months, 4 months, because those were the days when it's CA, you could only 1% or maximum 2% people will pass. It was the toughest exam one could ever imagine. And therefore, my friends, rightly so, will study for 4, 5 months. And I would disturb their studies by saying, let's go out and enjoy. So I said, well, you are going to fail definitely. Let us not fail. So you please carry on, enjoy yourself, but we don't want to. And I got this rank, luckily, I don't know how, because this is my very bad piece. I cannot study for long. So I used to I will go through it. And even today, I do very fast reading. I can read about 40-50 pages in a matter of few minutes, because I know exactly how to get what reading. So I somehow got it anyway. Then I was always interested in social issues. And that's what I was telling you. Even I wanted to be a lawyer to fight for the society. So I was always interested in social issues. And I was involved with about 150 odd social organizations of a completely different kind. Then what happened was, I don't know whether I should expand my question with your permission. I'll just explain to you how I got into it. So what happened, interestingly, because my clients, as a charter, we had more than 1,000 clients, more than 200 assistants. So I used to also do a lot of free auditing and professional work for NGOs. So a lot of people used to come to me, and if somebody is giving free service, more people will come. So I used to give that. And I got connected with society more and more. Then one day question came that somebody wanted a loan, small person, at that time 5,000 rupees, and he was not getting 5,000 rupees loan. Of course, 5,000 was not even small at that time also, but still relatively small even in those days. And I said, why not getting loan? So I went to a cooperative bank and fought for him. Then I realized that cooperative banks also must be more sensitive to people's needs. They cannot just be operating in isolation. So I contested Saraswat Bank election. And at the age of 31, I was the chairman of the largest cooperative bank in India, Saraswat Bank. There's no other precedent of this kind. The largest bank, and of course that had transformed the bank, and that is a different story. But because I got into the bank and cooperatives, and I was so young, then I was already connected with so many social organizations. A lot of people, I became very popular. So a lot of people used to invite me for so many functions. I used to be always in social organizations program. Every day I used to have 5-6 social programs. Like a politicians may not get so many invitations. Politicians have to engage somebody to get those invitations. I was getting it without doing anything. So I'm just giving the background. So I was very popular in so-called. So all political parties, without my knowledge, were trying to get me into their party. I didn't know that, and I was not in a political party. So it so happened that I had gone for a professional assignment as a chartered accountant to Indonesia and Southeast Asia, 4-5 countries. And I get a call. You're asking me, I'm now telling you exactly how I got into politics. So I get a call from Mr. Thackeray, Balasaheb Thackeray, that I should run for the election against Mr. Madhu Dandavate, who was he was an ex-finance minister, one of the most respected and a very nice politician who used to come to the house for a dinner, etc. And I had a very close relationship with him. So they told me to contest against him. At that time, the Congress party, which was a very strong party at that time, also wanted me to contest from their side. I didn't have I knew clue of all this. But Mr. Thackeray called me first. Then I called my wife because I was in Indonesia. So my wife said, oh, how would he know your number? I only gave, because at that time there was no mobile. We had to track from the hotel. He said, I only gave you a number and we I know exactly why he called you. So all my sisters, my mother who was still living that time, and my wife, they all unanimously said, don't join politics. It is not our cup of tea. We don't want you to join. So I was thinking to myself that I keep criticizing, because I used to attend so many social programs. In all the social programs, I'll criticize politicians, saying that, why? Because I was feeling very strongly that why poor should suffer like this? Why a country is not developing? Why is something not happening? All the time it was playing on my mind, and I should speak about it. So I said, it is one thing is to criticize, and other thing is to do it yourself. It is very easy to criticize, saying that it is not happening, this is not happening, so why not you do it yourself? So I actually, despite huge opposition from my family, I decided to join. But to the credit of my wife and my entire family, my sisters, my mother, they supported me wholly once I decided to get in. They said, don't worry, my father had already passed out, so my father was not there. But I'm sure my father was living, he would have definitely said, go into politics, because he had a different bent of mind. But my family supported me, and then we worked on it. I was very lucky. And that is something like, I don't think there is any other precedent. The day I joined politics, because not in politics, I became member of Parliament Lok Sabha, state. The day I became Lok Sabha member, I was a cabinet minister. I was never a junior minister, never MLA, I was never holding any position at the state level. Straight away cabinet minister in union government under Vajpayee, I became Minister of Industry, cabinet minister. So this is a very unique case. But I don't give any credit for it to myself. This is all, firstly, I believe my Guru, my God has blessed me, so that is how it happened. And honestly speaking, this credit goes to the people who invited me to join politics. Credit goes to the people who actually made me a minister. So all of that happens to them. But that is how I entered politics. So I gave you a little long but proper answer.
No, but you've really given us a wonderful answer. And to be honest, Sureshji, we also didn't know this. So I'm sure a lot, and I was looking at the expressions of the people, and they were smiling. They were very, very eager. So thank you so much for being so candid. And you rightly mentioned some very key people who have been instrumental in bringing you. Since the question is on politics, Sureshji, this is my next question to you. That your ways of working as a key political leader in India are very different from the normal trend. You are very unassuming nature. Your dedication to serve each and every person that comes to you is very highly commendable. However, this has this simplicity sometimes made things difficult for you. Why I ask you is that what would be your advice to the business leaders that you see here in this amazing gathering who wish to follow your path of simple living with high performance?
Let me, again, if you permit me, I'll just elaborate a little bit. See, firstly, the positions that we occupy and a person who sits in that position are in a way two different people, but should not be two different people. I will give an example, which actually I really mean it. When I joined my college, a friend came to me and said, let's go and smoke. So I said, I don't smoke. He said, what do you mean? Now you are a college, so you must smoke. So his thinking was, and he also was not smoking before, but he wanted to smoke because he wanted to show that I am a collegian, therefore I must smoke, to prove a point that now I have crossed one kind of a catastrophic border and now I'm in a different, so I must smoke, so to prove a point. So that somehow never appealed to me. I said, see, I will smoke if I feel like smoking, but I don't want to smoke because I joined college. So I was thinking that what you want to do, you should do, but you should not do it just because somebody else is telling you to do, number one. Or number two, you should not do it only because you're occupying some position. That is like position means you have joined a college. So that has always been somehow internalized in my thinking, that you should not change yourself just because you have joined particular position. I'll tell you frankly, when I took my oath 25 years ago, almost 25 years, 96, first time. So I was wearing a cloth that I'm wearing today, shirt and pant, and I was just went there. Some people told me, are you crazy? You should be wearing the normal uniform of the politician. I said, listen, boss, I'm Suresh Prabhu. I'm going there to take oath as Suresh Prabhu. I will take oath as Suresh Prabhu will take oath as. So minister is incidental. I will be what I am. I am not going to change myself only with that position. And therefore, I would give you an example of smoking. Now, second question is, this is what I truly believe in. And I really mean, and if you're asking for advice, I have no position to give advice to anybody. But I'll share my experience if it benefits you. You know, I will tell you something which is very interesting. Very, very fundamental. We talk about integrity, right? All of us talk about integrity. And many times I given certificate to so many people that he possesses highest integrity without knowing what it means. But because somebody else had typed, I had to also type integrity because that is the format of certification. Now, what is integrity? I never thought about it till Pandurang Shastri Athawale. I don't know how many of you must have heard about him, Swadhyay Parivar, one of the great spiritual leader, Pandurang Shastri Athawale. I somehow had another thing, I don't know why, but I had some excellent personal relationship with many spiritual leaders, including Pope John Paul II. He invited me, I went there, I sought appointment. He was not meeting anybody, he met me. I met all kinds of spiritual leaders, Muslim, Christian, Jews, you can name them. I met all of them. Then I went to even in Israel also, I met many of them. The point I'm saying is, Pandurang Shastri Athawale made a very interesting point. He said, what is integrity? Which doesn't disintegrate, is integrity. But he gave another very example. He says, what is bhakti? Which vibhakt nahi hoti ho bhakti hai. Bhakti म्हणजे काय? तर जी विभक्त होत नाही ती भक्ती. And actually that explains integrity better than in the Marathi or in Sanskrit, that vibhakt and bhakti. Bhakti and vibhakti. So now, if you are a person and that person changes his personality just because he has become minister, it is not the person. You are a completely different person trying to occupy that. Just because you want to occupy that chair, you try to change yourself. So I personally feel that so-called simplicity that you talk about is nothing like simplicity. This is what you are. And you should remain what you are. You should not change just because somebody wants to change. I'll give another example. That is because of business. You know, I was I should not say this, but I was very successful chartered accountant. So one day, and I was very young, and I had a long hair. So one day my client was very impressed with me. He said, my German collaborators are coming and you are very good. Can I request you that, you know, you look so young, nobody believes that you are a chartered accountant, you look like a son of a chartered accountant. So can you, if you don't mind, trim your hair a bit? I said, boss, those who judge me from the size of my hair, I don't care for their opinion. Because then he's not judging me as a chartered accountant, he's judging me hair, size of my hair. So am I a hairstylist or you are your hair? What is it? So point I'm saying is, don't change yourself just to suit somebody. Like I understand there's a dress code, which I understand. I fully understand. So even today I go for some parties or something. Yesterday I had a Indo-Japan strategic dialogue. So they told me this is a dress code. Okay, I understand. So I was wearing, you were showing some pictures of mine where I'm wearing a jacket. So I don't mind doing that. But I'm saying I should not be forced to that. I don't want to insensitive to somebody. If I go to somebody's house and there is some code that house has got, I will follow that code because we have to be sensitive to that. But I don't want to pretend to be somebody which I am not. So that is what I am trying to portray by wearing some clothes or something like that and trying to say I am a different, because now I become minister, I am different than what I was before. It's not like that. So I personally, no advice to anybody because I'm not in a position to advise. But even in business, I understand you have to wear a business suit. Nothing wrong. Or you want to wear a pair of jeans. Nothing wrong. You want to wear a knicker short and go out. Nothing wrong. You do what you feel like comfortable or what the situation demands. But the outside of you, the clothing or anything else, should not be the criteria for people judging you. People should judge you for what you are. And you should have that confidence in yourself that I will not mind, should not be judged by some extraneous issues. I should be judged by my intrinsic strength, what I am, and you should be able to stand by. So the simplicity is nothing great. I don't feel that. This is a basic ingredient, basic quality of every human being it should be. You should remain like a human being with fellow human being. That is what it should be. So I don't see it's a great thing, but I would request all of you that decide for yourself what you want to be. Not somebody else should decide it for you. That is very important. If somebody else starts deciding for you, then your life is ruined, because then you are being always like to cater to that particular perception. He feels like that, so I should be like that. And your life is completely ruined. You'll never be able to do what you are.
Thank you so much, Sureshji. Sureshji, let me say this with full confidence on behalf of the whole group, that you have all the right to advise us. You have all the right to guide us, and that's why we are listening to you. These are amazing pearls of wisdom, and I can only thank you for showering. You said something very interesting, Sureshji. I mean, the amount of people you have met, right, from Pope John Paul to different leaders, and the amount of the various accomplishments that you have had. This is an important question, because also probably it links to a lot of us. What would you rate as your most amazing accomplishment so far, and why do you rate it that way?
It's very difficult to say, because if you want to rate what is a great accomplishment, that means you are presuming that there is an accomplishment. So I don't think there is any accomplishment I got. Therefore, there is nothing like rating, because when you say rating means I have more than one, so I have to rate one of them. But I can tell you something very interestingly. I am going back to the memory. When I joined politics, there was a very unusual entry into politics, because I never been in politics. I was no family background. I didn't have the kind of money to spend. I never spent any money in politics. I never made money in politics. That is a different thing. That's why I couldn't spend money in politics. Then I don't have a nuisance value. I never troubled anybody. I never blackmailed anybody, despite the fact that I have held 10 cabinet positions. Never did that. So somebody asked me that you don't have any of the characteristics that typical politician, and still you are joining politics. Why? How do you look at it? So I said, I have basically the whole purpose of doing it. I'm sticking my neck out. That is one of my friends from US, who was very close friend of mine. He's an American. He sent me a very interesting, that time there was a fax, not an email. So he sent me a fax saying that you're sticking your neck out. And I really admire you, because we in America, we always criticize politicians, but don't do that. So anyway, this was one part. So there was a business magazine which interviewed me, very long interview. And they said, why you want to join? So I said, I want to change this, that, or that. So as it happens, few years later, when I was contesting another election, they came to me and they quoted me from an interview. They said, you had said that you want to change the world. Not the world, but change the world around you. So did you succeed? I said, it's a very good question. Let me confess, I didn't succeed at all. I didn't succeed in changing the world, because I even didn't, when I was talking about it, it was too romantic an idea that I'll be able to change. And then I realized that world is so big and it's so complex, it's very difficult to change. But I'm very happy that I didn't change with the world. I didn't change the world, but I didn't change with the world. Now, if you want to ask me the accomplishment, I can say this is my only accomplishment. That I did not change with the world. I did not let myself to be carried away by the forces. Despite so many pressures, I never took any measures which will not appeal to my conscience. In fact, I resigned once as a Prime Minister, refusing to budge to any pressure. And Mr. Vajpayee, who was the Prime Minister at that time, he was so upset that he has to accept my resignation. So he brought me back within few days in an equivalent position to look at Interlink of Rivers, because he knew exactly where I was going, because I refused to compromise. So that is what I did. So if you want my accomplishment, I would say that I remained what I am. And I had some very lofty romantic ideas, which I have tried to implement, but not necessarily always succeeded. But I felt that what I am, not an ego I, but my core should not change. If I change my core, then what remains? This is Gandhiji's saying, that if the salt doesn't remain salty, then how can you call it a salt? So if you just keep getting into all kinds of things just to be so-called successful, it's not something which you should to do. So I have somehow managed it. I just completed 67 years last week, exactly 1 week ago on the 11th of July. So I am saying I had a good inning. I had a very good. So I had to, if you want to ask me accomplishment, I would consider that's the only accomplishment. That is meant what I am.
That is such an amazing and such a refreshing answer, Sureshji. I have never heard such an amazing answer. I'm sure others will also agree to what I'm saying. And that really is your hallmark, I must say. This is really your hallmark that you bring forth. That leads me to a very, very important question, Sureshji. We all face that. We all go through that. We all, some people can manage it better. Some people even give up. And the question is about criticism and detractors. How do you manage, or how do you handle criticism? How do you manage detractors who try to block your efforts? What would your advice be to the business professionals and even to individuals who are not business professionals on this very, very important topic?
See, firstly, you should accept the reality that nobody is going to come and pat on your back all the time. That is a fact. In fact, if there is a one pat on the back, you should be thankful to that person because he has patted the back and not stabbed the back. So it's something very luckily you have happened. So there will be more stabber to your back than patter to your back. So this is how it is. The reality of life. You have to accept it. And particularly, there is a element that when you are famous, you will get criticism. If you have money, you will get criticism. If you get power, you will get criticism. If you get some position, you will get criticism. So this is inevitable part of a social society. And this has been human life. So you cannot blame anybody for it. So I think we should just ignore it. I think that's the best way not to react to it. See, the problem is, and that is of course now I'm going to a little bit of a spiritualism. See, a reactive part, reaction creates a problem. It's not something, Gautam Buddha was once asked by Ananda, his most devoted disciple. He said, that somebody had come and abused Gautam Buddha. Gautam Buddha was sitting quietly. He abused him, gave all kinds of bad words. He was just sitting quietly. So Ananda got very angry. He said, I want to beat them up. He said, don't worry. So after some time, they got tired and went away. Then Gautam Buddha explained to Ananda. He said, just imagine, somebody comes to your house and puts a gift. What do? Either you take it or you just don't even look at it and it remains there. So the criticism is like that. Criticism is like a gift, whether you want to take it, or criticism is like a gift which you want to just look at it and keep it there. So if you don't react to something, that's the only best way to do it. Of course, it is not always easy because we are all human beings. So we sometimes feel bad about it. But my suggestion to you will be, or my sharing my experience with you would be, just ignore it. The truth remains. The criticism is sometimes constructive. So if somebody tells you something, you should accept it as a good point of view. But if somebody deliberately trying to run you down, it doesn't matter at all because long term only truth remains. I will tell you something which I've seen in my personal experience. The reality of truth is so strong that only remains. So somebody has told, suppose somebody comes and says, you are a thief, you are this, doesn't matter. Because that will never stick to you because it is not truth. And therefore, truth will remain ultimately. So I think that is something which I personally feel we should try to do it. And in somewhere or the other, if you don't react now, then automatically it doesn't affect you. It's like something coming and going away, touching it and just going away from. So I think that is what it is. You asked me something else about criticism and what you said.
No, I think on detractors, people who, and you rightly said that, you actually answered that question, people who are detractors who come and stab you in the back, and you probably have seen, you've had your share of those as well. And how have you managed those? People, detractors, detractors who stab you in the back, who block you, who don't let you go in front.
I think the best way to deal with detractors is to just detract from them, rather than retract. Don't react to them. I think that's the best way to look at it. And I'll tell you something, Amit, I'll just tell you something. See, you and Pradyumna, who are two of you are trying to actually do this program together. Why so many of them have come for this program today? I know your wife also, you also do so many good events in the program. Some of them have gone like this. Nanda Kumar Dekne, you just sent me a message in a little while ago. He was in the G, and I remember the good old days when he was the CEO for GE Energy, and I was a power minister around that period. And Scott Bayman he was reminding me the CEO of GE. Of course, I had a very good equation with the global CEO of GE. Very good equation, in fact. But I'm just saying is why so many of you have come together and stick together? Why? Because they all know that you are doing something good. Now, suppose somebody can always say something, but that doesn't matter. End of the day, people see through you and they will do it. But somebody may be still jealous. He may not like that. Why Amit should get such a prominence? Why he should do this program? Not this will always happen. We should ignore it. It doesn't matter. You feel like that, and it's all the thing. Because reality will remain is that you are taking effort. That's why it is happening. This is happening. In my case, I had a more reason to be a victim, or rather the center of attraction for criticism, because I, at very young age, see, I'll tell you something which is very unusual. Without any of this, without doing anything called politicking, I got all the top positions. I had a fantastic equation, at least with 5-6 prime ministers. Of course, with some very close. Like, for example, Atalji used to treat me like his son. But many, Narasimha Rao, I had a very good equation with Narasimha Rao. With, of course, for a short time, but Deve Gowda and Gujralji. Then, of course, Manmohan Singh. I have been knowing each other for a long time. Modi ji, of course, I'm very lucky to be associated with him. So I had a very good equation with many of them. So some people will always feel, what is that? How can he be? So, but I don't do anything. So people sometimes ask me also, what is that you do too? I don't do anything, honestly speaking. But this is the greatness of the leaders, that they can think like this. So there is more reason for me, because I became youngest chairman of the largest cooperative bank. I was called to so many countries, on 16 global organizations, top class global organizations. And even today, I can tell you, I must have at least more than 100 countries, top class relationship, absolutely top class. That of heads of state, heads of government, top business leaders, I know them extremely well. But all this happened, but none of my qualities. This happened maybe because of certain forces. So so there is a cause of jealousy. So you're asking me the jealousy, and that's how the criticism. But you can't help it. You have to just accept it.
Amazing. To all our friends, Suresh ji just mentioned his age. But let me tell you one thing. He's the youngest. He's from his mind, he's probably the youngest panelist that we have today. He is still studying. He's still doing his PhD. Suresh, you are also involved in so many social organizations on top of all the other responsibilities that you have. This is a very important question for each one of us. Where do you find the passion, and how do you get the energy? What drives you?
I know, I'll tell you something. So that will probably answer the question. You know, in last few weeks, I never realized that there is going to be, I never planned it. I mean, nobody planned it, that there is a lockdown. And I have addressed not less than maybe about something close to 200, but I reached out to almost 1.5 crore families on only 70 different subjects. So people keep asking me this question, how do you, keep talking? I don't know, really speaking. I personally feel that, there is something interesting which I had read when I was a young boy, that do your best and forget the rest. And of course, this is in English, but the same thing you can read it in Gita to say that karmane vadikaraste ma phalesu kadachan. So I think ultimately, it is nothing that really what keeps me going is probably just I want to do something good for anybody. And I get a fantastic benefit when I do something good for somebody. In fact, in my constituency, which is no longer my constituency in Konkan, because I now member of parliament for Andhra Pradesh, but there we are trained about 100,000 for self-employment. So many of them got self-employment. My birthday last week, one person sent me a message that because of you, me and my wife got a job, and now my son is doing PhD in United States. He said, I could never imagine that my son will go do that only because we got a job. So many such, I keep getting such messages. I don't even remember how I held them, what happened, I don't remember. But just imagine the greatest satisfaction. I am not a moneyed person, but I feel very happy when somebody comes and tells me that he has benefited from something I did. Now, again, I know for sure I didn't do it. Somebody else, the God must have done something, but I was an instrument to do that. So this is what, if you ask me the motivation and what is the energy, this is what I get it from. That if you can do something good, it's always such a fantastic pleasure and enjoyment. So I really do that.
Amazing, Sureshji. I think each word, each question, I think my questions have been very simple, but the answers that you have provided are so amazing. I will now come to the last question, Sureshji, and thank you so much. We have slightly overshot the time and you have already given, or I have taken the privilege of probably asking 5 or 10 minutes more from you. And this is an important question. This is also a question which I know is so close to your heart. How do you see the path to becoming a developed economy in the coming years for our motherland? And what can be our USP to the world and to the investors? Because we have a lot of people who are now spread around the world. What is the USP that you see for India in the coming years?
You know, firstly, let me again, if you permit me, just let me explain this. Firstly, our USP is nothing but our people. Mm-hmm. You must actually accept that reality that India's growth story is Indians' growth story. Okay. And in fact, that is true for many societies. Like, for example, America would not be a great country if the Americans were not great people. So, you know, and they were smart enough to understand that. That's why they were importing anybody and anybody possible, allowing them to come there so that they will get the best of the talent. Then they become Americans, and then in the process they will develop the country. But in India, we don't have to do that. We don't have to import a talent because that is intrinsically available. Now just imagine all of you are working in different parts of the world and doing such a great job. So are you not fighting each day a battle on your own? Because you have to succeed in comparison and in competition with so many other nationalities, so many other people, because you are working in global scene. So what is your strength? See, each one of you can succeed despite a competition in foreign soil, and when the situation is not all the time it's good. So it's not always you are going to get tailwind. You are going most of the time you get headwind, and still you succeed. So Indians is our biggest USP. The problem is that, and you'll admit it, that our situation has to be made in such a way, including our laws, our regulation, our systems, our infrastructure. If you make it as good as the rest of the world where you succeed, we'll succeed more than anybody else. Because the Indians are succeeding everywhere else. Now we are running top companies of the world. But if same person is asked to run a MSME in India, will fail, I'm sure about it. Because if the top person who is running $100 billion company in the United States, he comes back to India and he has to start an MSME, he will not succeed because situation is different. So what I'm saying is, you have to make sure, therefore, that is what Prime Minister Modi is trying to do incidentally. He is trying to work on changing the systems to make it better. I think that's the only thing that we need to do. Indians will make it happen. Now the other part of the question, what you have to do, be a developed country. Now, see, the definition of developed, and that's why I was saying, with your permission, I'll tell you something just as a food for thought. What is developed? You have to think about it really, very clearly. Is it per capita income? Or is it something else? Now, if you really look at it, I went to Myanmar about 15, 16 years ago with my son. So Myanmar's per capita income was $150. And even at that time, India's per capita income was 10 times of that. And when I went to Myanmar, $150, country was still under military junta's rule. There was hardly a person I met who was not smiling, who was all the time contented. We somehow landed into a village unannounced, and it so happened that in that village, there was a person who was going to be initiated to, a young boy was going to be initiated into a Buddhist monk. So they, small village, poor village, they had made some celebratory dinner or something. The The whole food they wanted to give it to us. I said, no. I said, we just landed here. He said, no, this is a strange coincidence that God has sent you here because on such an auspicious day you have come here, so you must eat the food. So this is what Myanmar was. So now tell me something. Myanmar with $150 per capita income, would you call it a developed country or an undeveloped country? With the people so happy with such their attitude like this, and therefore I'm not talking about Bhutan, which is trying to work on happiness index, but I'm talking about Myanmar, a country which is not normally considered like this, and this is my personal experience I'm telling you. So what I'm asking you is, what is that developed country? So whether we should be, I personally feel, we should redefine the so-called parameters of what we should try to do to be a better country where quality of life of individual citizen will be better. They will be, at least in many areas, will be able to do something which a human being deserves to have, rather than something like that. If you can do that, I think that is my definition of a developed country would be. And I think we should try to do that. I will tell you, many areas, even in today, people in villages, we always pity on them that you are living in a village, I am living in Mumbai. In Konkan, I'll share my personal experience because I was 4-time Lok Sabha MP from there. People migrate from there. Every person in Konkan, even a poorest person, has a house there, has a family there. So he's completely uprooted from there and he comes to Mumbai, lives in slum. So is he living in a developed part of India or he's living a different kind of life? So I think we should try to redefine, rephrase a so-called, because other countries have done it, not necessarily we have to follow the same path. We have to, of course, increase our per capita income for the benefit of the people, for making their lives better. I think that is what ultimately it should be. And I think that is what, in my definition of developed India, would be. And to do that, I think we have to first change the thing so the parameters are properly decided. So we know exactly where we are reached. I think if you do that, that will be a better thing.
Wonderful. What a lovely answer, Sureshji. Sureshji, you had asked me, you asked the question, why are these people here? And I can tell you very proudly, they are not, I have no role to play there. As you rightly said, Pradyumna Ingle is the glue. Then we have Samir, who also acts as the binder. And the foundation is we call him our Guru, Nanda Kumar Dekne. So I will now ask Nanduji to propose a vote of thanks on all our behalf. And then I think if you have even 5 minutes, we can just open it out for everybody to have just a quick word with you. But over to our foundation, over to our mentor, Nandu.
Yeah, Amit, thank you so much. You have been very generous, actually. You do everything there. And I think, but let me tell you, I'll never forget my meeting with Mr. Suresh Prabhu, maybe 18, 20 years ago. Maybe 2001, 2002, when he was the power minister. And I was surprised when I met him. I think I met him in some evenings and all. I said, this simplicity that he expresses, he's so successful. And he's so simple. Simple doesn't mean his dress code and all he talked about. He's so approachable and all. I thought this is a spectacular thing. And I met several politicians at that point in time, and there were several power ministers, but this gave me a very inspiring experience, actually. I will never forget that. This was really great. I think his contributions to the power industry also something outstanding. He had done that, the 100 gigawatts, Mr. Prabhu, if I'm not right. I think power by 2000 to 2012 and all that. The electricity bill that you modified, 7-year plan for rural electrification, 150,000 villages in India, etc. Then again, you become a chemicals person with Minister of Chemicals, and your contribution to the pharmaceutical industry. I think all this has benefited the country so much. I will never forget that. And as Prad was saying, Pradyumna, we call him Prad, but I think it's a great combination of academics, your top-class execution, and also very trusted leadership. I think this is a very unique combination. We respect you for that. We love you for that. So thank you, Mr. Prabhu. I think for making this evening very engaging and inspirational. I think this is absolutely unique. And thank you for all your wisdom and humility. And I think it's good that you stay as you are. You can't be what you are not. I think this is what I learned from my bosses in the past. You just can't be what you're not when you go for the interviews. Just be as you are, and you will do well. But I think for us, the messages that we got, I think this was amazing. Your messages, the truth is something that will only remain long term. I think that was outstanding. Your definition of integrity, I think something that does not disintegrate. I think that was amazing. I really liked it a lot. Then definition of developed India and what it should be, the happiness index of Myanmar, the happiness quotient. This was really, it's a very thought-provoking, you are out of the box thinker that I know. I think this is good. So we can keep on talking. I met you in Shanghai. I think Amit, Brad, they do a fantastic job on this Vishwanath platform. We have got the other binder, as I said, Samir, then Subodh. What a great team there. I think I want to thank them as well for organizing such an excellent event. And I think thank you for all the participants for being here. I think it really made our evening very insightful and we enjoyed. Enjoy the evening, but if Amit, if you want to keep it open for some questions from anybody, please feel free to do so.
So I think we will wish Sureshji a lovely evening. I know he's very busy, and we've already taken more time than we had promised. Sureshji, thank you so much.
I just 1 minute, if you permit me. I'm not
Sureshji,
joking. I really mean it. This was one of the fantastic program I had in the course of last few months that I've been doing all this kind of program. This was one of the most enjoyable program because this was completely different experience. I really feel so happy, honestly speaking. And I never realized, I was just looking at a watch. It's almost 1 hour since we started. Yes. So this was fantastic program. I really want to thank each one of you for making it so good. I never realized that. In fact, I was right. It's like reinventing me. It was like that. So I was re-looking at myself when you were asking me this question. I was thinking and trying to talk about it. So it was the most enjoyable evening for me. Of course, I know for Amit is already in 9:30 or almost now.
Sureshji, it's only 9 o'clock.
And maybe if you are in different geographies of the world, so I don't know what part of the world you are all. But thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. And please tell me any other time I can be of any help to any one of you. If I'll be very happy to do whatever is best possible. Thank you very much. I really
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You are blessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.